My name is Lisa Ryan, and I'm a No-Limitspreneur.
You're now locked onto another episode of the Nolimitspreneur Podcast, the show that helps you dominate in life and in business to enhance your mindset, confidence, productivity, time management, habits, and goals. And now, your host, Maher Abiad.
Hey, what is up, Success Nation? It's your boy Maher Abiad here, back with you again for what is going to be another excellent podcast. Because on today's show, I'm going to be speaking with Lisa Ryan, who is the Chief Appreciation Strategist at Grategy. She is an expert in helping companies improve employee engagement. Today, we're going to be discussing more about how to improve that engagement, improving company culture, as well as the power of gratitude and the power of discipline in our lives. This is going to be a very value-packed interview, so let's get underway. Lisa Ryan, thank you so much for coming onto the Nolimitspreneur Podcast. Really excited to have you here today. There are so many things that I can't wait to talk to you about regarding employee engagement, personal development training, and of course, finding out more about your story. So thank you again for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Before we jump into a lot of the content, you're an amazing speaker. You've done hundreds of talks to individuals and companies to help them better with employee engagement and how we can have sort of a better workplace culture. Before we get into that in your books, of course, let's actually get to know more about who Lisa Ryan is, find out a little bit more about your story, what kind of got you to this place where you are today, if you can kind of shed some light on your story there.
Oh, sure. Yeah, my career was actually in sales, and believe me, as a speaker, I thank God every day for a sales background. The first part of my career, I was an executive recruiter. I'm actually one of the few people on the planet who can say they sold their mother. Mom actually hated that job, but I said, Mother, you have got to stay there at least 90 days because I have a guarantee and I can't afford to give back the commission I made on you. So thankfully, Mom was there for 2.5 years as she didn't disown me. From there, I spent 13 years in industrial sales, including 7 years in the welding industry. And yes, I do weld. And from there, I went into healthcare. Speaking was always part of my career. When I was in the welding industry, I would do seminars on oxyacetylene safety, and I was also their corporate computer trainer, trying to teach these guys that were used to taking their 6-inch wide, display book into the field to sell products. I got to teach them why using a laptop in the field was the better idea. So that was fun in the 90s when they were just kind of getting started with that. And then I spent the last 7 years of my career in healthcare where I did latex allergies, double gloving, hand hygiene, occupational asthma, you name it, some of the most boring topics on the planet, and I got to make them exciting. So I've always wanted to be a speaker, and it really was on October 12th, 2010, when that very same lucrative medical sales position was eliminated via group conference call, with 12 of us getting canned at the same time. And I basically said, no corporation will ever do that to me again. And Grategy was literally born on that day. Now, starting a business in the middle of an economic collapse, probably not one of my best ideas. But 10 years later, it's really, I can't imagine my life being any other way. And so I have had the pleasure and have been blessed with being able to support myself 100% for the last 10 years from speaking and training and book sales and, everything along that personal development line.
Well, congratulations on that perseverance. It's amazing to hear your story about how really things just got flipped upside down. And I think what really defines us as entrepreneurs and as humans is the ability to pivot, the ability to sort of, when your back's up against the wall, you're really just, saying, you know what, I'm going to make this happen. And no matter what your situation, whatever it is in life, you are able to accomplish whatever your goals and your dreams are. So congratulations on that. You definitely give a lot of talks to companies about that employee engagement. And this is what you sort of specialize in with your company, really helping, create that sort of bridge between the employee and the management team to really, get everything cohesive. Talk about, obviously, as we know, a happy employee is a productive employee. And it's really important that employees are really on the same page and motivated to do good work and to do the best work so the company benefits and the customer benefits at the end of the day. Talk about more about how companies can keep employees engaged better in the workplace.
Sure. In my programs, I generally will go through my thanks process. I tend to like acronyms, so I use that. But when it comes to creating that culture of appreciation where people do feel valued, respected, appreciated in the workplace, it comes down to, first of all, building trust. Setting that foundation that your employees believe that you are going to do the things that you say you're going to do. Not coming home every time you come back from a seminar or something like that with some new flavor of the week, or hiring some consultant to come in to change everything upside down and nobody has buy-in. We need to set that foundation of trust, and it's picking one thing. It's picking one thing to make little tweaks to, because your company culture did not happen overnight. It's not changing overnight. So when we can just kind of step back, ask our employees what they want, and then look for ways to help them get it. The H is to help your employees to be better tomorrow than they are today. This is investing in them. And not only professional development, not only skills training, but how can you develop personally? How can you be more confident? How can you be more grateful? How can you be more mindful? How can you be a better speaker? Whatever it is, Richard Branson had a great quote that said that you want to train people so that they can leave, but you want to treat them well enough so that they don't want to. So that investing, letting your employees know that you care enough in them, about them, to invest your hard-earned dollars in training them. The A is to acknowledge, applaud, and appreciate their efforts. Catch them in the act of doing things well. Focus on their strengths. Notice them. Say thank you. Appreciate them, and let them feel that they are valued in your organization. The N, I think we've all had a big taste of that in the last couple months with COVID-19 raging all over the place, and that is to navigate work-life integration. What I can say about that right now is the way that you are treating your employees right now, you are setting them up for whether they decide to stay with you or not. During this time, when you have employees working at home, did you reach out to them and say, how are you doing personally? How is it dealing with your kids and with school and all of that, and with your aging parents? And I know you're afraid, and I'm afraid too. Instead of just, well, why didn't you get the work done? I didn't get that report. We need to connect with people differently, and that work-life integration, notice I didn't say balance, means that time is the greatest gift that you can give to your employees, and we try to figure out ways to make that work. The K, getting to know your employees. What do they like? How are they motivated? What's their favorite candy bar? Their hobbies. How do they like to be recognized? Do they like public recognition? Do they hate public recognition? Because we look at employees as individuals and we treat them as such. And then finally, the S is to serve a greater mission, because people want to be part of something that's bigger than them. In the case, again, let's look at the pandemic. We have a company in Cleveland here, a brewery, that they turned from making beer and they flipped on a dime, and now they're making hand sanitizer, okay? We've had clothing companies that they went from making men and women's suits to making masks. So when employees are involved in something that is for the betterment of the world and not just a product to make a profit, it makes them feel much more connected. So we trust, we have help, we acknowledge, we navigate work-life integration, we get to know them, and we serve a greater mission. And when you have that thanks practice, that's how you engage your employees.
Those are absolutely fantastic tips, and I think they're super, super important. As you mentioned, respect, and then that leads to buy-in. When somebody feels appreciated, respected, they will do so much more to better the company than if they feel like they're just a robot or a number, and not a human being. And I appreciate you talking about those points. And you also mentioned company culture, which is very, very important. You did a video series called The 7 Mistakes Managers Make to Crush Company Culture. Obviously, as we know, it goes without saying that people quit because of managers and bosses, and not so much because of the job itself. And I've experienced that in the dozens and dozens of jobs I've had over my lifetime as well. And can you talk about more sort of about that video series, what sort of these mistakes are and the importance of the company culture?
Sure. There's things like, not providing feedback. Employees want to know how they're doing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. How are they going to be better tomorrow if you don't let them know and give them feedback when it happens in the moment, where you're having those conversations? No training. We talk about that just with the thanks step of investing in your employees. Unrealistic expectations. Sometimes we have this goal in our mind, but unless you have find out what are your employees dealing with, you think that at one time, well, right now they're working from home, they're remote because we've closed our offices, and they have no interruption, they should be able to get their work done. Yeah, they have all kinds of interruptions because they have their kids and they have their friends, and they have to social distance, and they have to wear masks and do all of these things before. There is no acknowledgement, catching people in the act of doing things well. So it's all these little things that go along the thanks process continuum, but there are these little reminders of, it doesn't take a lot of time, it doesn't take a lot of effort, and it certainly doesn't take a lot of money to create the type of culture that you want. But these little tiny baby steps, these little efforts over time, that's what starts to make the difference and sets that foundation for engagement.
And that leads us sort of to my to the next question I had, and the importance of sort of what you were just talking about, that respect and that appreciation. Speaking of that, I want to jump into gratitude and how in not just this book, but in the book called Upside of Down Times, Discovering the Power of Gratitude. And you wrote a number of other great books on gratitude as well. I think it's really important in this day and time that really take a step back and look at sort of what we have and the wonderful things that we have, and look at gratitude as a tool to really put our life into perspective, that we are in, even though there are a lot of negative things going on around us and in the world, unfortunately, we do, have so many good things going for us. And if you can talk more about sort of the power of gratitude and what it means to you, because for me personally, I wake up every morning and I ensure that the first thing I really do is I say 3 things that I'm grateful for every morning. And that has completely changed my life. Talk about more about what that means to you as well.
Yeah, actually the whole thing started in 2009. I was on my way. I had gone to a 4-day seminar with 3 of my friends. It was a Tony Robbins seminar, so of course there was a fire walk involved. And when you get done with 4 days with Tony Robbins, you are pretty, shall we say, fired up. So my friends and I were driving home from Chicago, and we were really excited. And we also knew that unless we took some kind of action, all of that excitement that we had just experienced, we'd go right back to where we were before. And we didn't want that to happen again. So we opened up a Facebook thread, and every day we shared with people, people we met, experiences that we had, things that we learned. And one of my friends said, well, why don't we write down 3 things we're grateful for? I was like, okay, did it every day, held each other accountable. And that was when I discovered the power of gratitude. I was in medical sales at the time, and all of a sudden it was like customers that I hadn't talked to for months were calling me and saying, hey, can you come in and sell me some stuff? And I was like, I will be right there. There were 2 large hospital systems that I had been calling on for almost 5 years that seemed to close effortlessly. I noticed the difference from my husband, who was becoming more verbally appreciative. So all of these things were changing, but the only thing that I had changed was that daily practice of gratitude. So I've literally read thousands of white papers and books and attended programs to see, is gratitude more than this feel-good emotion that we normally ascribe to it? And I found out that there was. People that have a regular practice of gratitude, you said that you wake up in the morning and you say 3 things that you're grateful for. I wake up in the morning, I write down 5 things that I'm grateful for, starting with I am grateful for. And people will say, well, Lisa, does it have to be different all the time? And it doesn't necessarily have to be different, but if every day I wrote down, I'm grateful for my husband, I'm grateful for my cats, I'm grateful for my house, it gets really boring. So instead, it's, I'm so grateful that Scott grilled out a great dinner last night. I'm so grateful for watching a movie with my favorite kitty, Tinkerbell, sitting on my lap. So what it does is it puts you more into that feeling of gratitude. And I know that in the 10 years that 11 years now that I've been doing this gratitude practice, that it literally has rewired my brain. Because now I used to kind of joke around about it, the fact that, nothing bad ever happens to speakers. We just get new material. And what I have found instead is that when these quote unquote bad things happen, one of my first responses now is, how can I look at this situation differently? What can I find to be grateful for? So in my audiences, I don't know where they're starting out, what's going on in their life and all of that. So I will actually say, start where you're at. Start where you're at. The fact that you have, when you flick on the light switch, electricity happens, that you have running water, flushing toilets, reliable transportation. Start with the basics, and then as you get more into the habit of this, it's much easier to find those things to be grateful for.
One thing that I do with my mindset training is the power of this of the gratitude is related to positivity. And I think that when you are more positive, you expand, your mind expands, you can see things, you can create better things, you can do better things. When you're in a negative state, what do we naturally do? We contract as humans. And that contraction is not just physical, but it's mental as well. You sort of lock yourself down and you just sort of collapse and you contract. And that, I believe, is one of the biggest powers of gratitude and something we should all practice daily, because it will definitely open up your mind. It will show you a new perspective on life, and that's something that will definitely help so many others. The other thing that I wanted to jump into was sort of getting into, as you mentioned, these habits and creating these sort of good habits in life. And that leads to discipline. Discipline, as we know, is very, very important to be able to get things done when you don't feel like it, to really move the needle, not just in business, but in your own personal life as well. Talk about sort of what good discipline has helped sort of you in life accomplish, and how discipline, what discipline means to you.
Sure. Well, discipline from a gratitude standpoint means that number one, you get a gratitude journal or something without dates in it, because that what happens is you get a journal with dates in it, and then you're traveling or something happens and you forget a couple days, and then you're like, I either have to make up stuff that happened 5 days ago or forget it, I'm just not going to do it anymore. And it's forgiving yourself, moving on, and continuing the practice, just picking up where you've left off. But as far as the rest of my life, I can say that that's probably persistence, more so, is probably one of my superpowers. It's figuring out what you want to do. Again, we talked at the beginning that I started a business in 2010. While I'd go to networking events and people would be, handing out their resume like a Texas Hold'em, tournament, hire me, hire me, hire me, hire me. I knew that I wanted to start my own business, and by gosh, I was going to do it. And, you have that eye on the prize. And I always say I want to be the last person standing. So what is it that you want to do and you believe in so strongly that you're willing to do the work? Those are my three favorite words. Just do the work. And that takes discipline. It takes belief. And there are days that, where I've been frustrated, where my friends have had to talk me off the ledge, where, all of this stuff, it's not happening right now. I started the year with, the 2020 was on its way to be my best year in business ever by far. I mean, I was smoking. And then COVID hit and it went from, to nothing. And there was kind of the first couple weeks of this, shell shock, basically, where you just don't know what to do and you don't know if it's appropriate to reach out to people about their events because all these events are being canceled all over the place. But then, I switched the mindset to saying, how can I come to people in service? What information can I give them? What videos can I share with them? For the last couple weeks, I've been sharing a 60 to 90 second video tip on LinkedIn every single day. They're well produced, recorded video tips, but it's like, that's something that, I could charge for it. I could put together a whole program of these tips that people could use, but that's not what I want to do. You come to people in service and kind of get rid of that. It's always got to be about making money, and it's always got to be about, how do I survive? Sometimes when the whole world is going through a trauma like this, we get further in life by being disciplined as far as what we can give. How can we help out? How can we, look around and just give some valuable information and tips to our fellow human beings? And that's what's going to change everything.
It's amazing how, we, like you just said, you were having the best year. You thought 2020, I said the same thing. 2020 is going to be an amazing year. And then all of a sudden coronavirus hit and that uncertainty, just throws you for a loop. You don't even know which way to even look next. But I think it's important that, like you said, we still are able to pivot and to, reassess the situation. And you were able to really, using, for example, gratitude, say, how can I give back? How can I better the lives of others in these difficult times? And that's absolutely fantastic. And I think I wanted to ask you you obviously are very motivated and excited and passionate about what you do. Where do you sort of see yourself going in the next decade? How do you want to, what keeps you motivated to wake up every morning and live the best life possible? What's your sort of more longer term vision that you want to give back to the world, for example?
Mm-hmm. Boy, that's such a good question because I'm in a really good, pre-coronavirus was on a really good track where I'm speaking as much as I want to speak, 50, 60 times a year. I'm good with that. It gives me just enough travel. Because of COVID though, I'm learning a lot more. My virtual programs have gotten a lot better. And I think that is a change that I'm excited about because there's something about being in front of a live audience, but there's also everything that comes with travel. Never thought that I would say that I would miss airplanes and airports and, all of that, but I really do. But looking forward, it will be taking advantage of more of the opportunities to create content that's out there 24/7 that continues to help people not only find gratitude, but to change their workplace culture. I do a lot of work with manufacturing and manufacturing associations. And my bigger goal is to really change the conversation when it comes to encouraging people to go into the trades. To make sure that those programs are in the schools and that we're looking at different alternatives than just college as the only way to be successful. And even knowing that your college degree can equally transform into a manufacturing environment because of all the super cool technology, the 3D printing technology. I mean, 10 years from now, goodness knows what we're going to be printing. All these technologies that when you look around you, If you're watching this podcast now, look around you. Every single thing in the room you're in was made by somebody. And we can change that conversation to encourage people to look at that, the excitement that's there. And plus, we need people to go into the trades and to realize that when I was in the welding industry and it was everything your mother ever warned you about, as far as dirty and smelly and hot and all that kind of stuff, most of these plants, when I go on plant tours, they are cleaner than my house. Which, okay, maybe it's not saying a lot, but it's saying something because they're pretty darn clean and high tech and brighter and everything else than you probably would expect. So I think looking forward, it's really creating that lifestyle, opening that conversation, and being able to help as many people as I can to not only to find the good in their life, but also to create those workplace cultures that work.
Absolutely. And that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you're doing obviously a lot of work right now in this post coronavirus time at your company, Grategy. Talk more about sort of how you can help organizations, how you can help individuals with your offerings, with your services, and how they can get in touch, learn more about you if they want to reach out and get in touch with you as well.
Sure. Well, I have a variety of ways that I work with my clients because I look at just as I expect my clients to look at their employees as individuals, I look at my clients as individuals. So depending on, from a time standpoint, I've done programs that have been 20 minutes. I've done programs that have been 6 hours. Longer term assignments where we set up a program where I come in, kind of kick off that culture conversation. A lot of times, if a company has they've done an employee survey and their results were not what they were looking for in terms of employees feeling appreciated, because believe me, that one pops up on those surveys quite a bit, then to bring me in to work not only with the management team, but I really like working with the shop employees and just the regular hourly employees and the support team, because then they see that whole conversation. It starts with leadership and it's going to trickle down throughout the entire organization. So I have live programs. Like I said, I'm doing a lot more virtual, and my online training programs, there's you're talking and chatting and breakout rooms, and it's the next best thing to being there. Of course, having me in the room is the best way to do it, but being able to have a virtual experience is also good as well. My website is lisaryanspeaks.com. And like I said, I'm all over social media. So LinkedIn, there are lots of articles and resources on my LinkedIn profile. And that's, believe it, Ask Lisa Ryan, because Lisa Ryan tends to be kind of a common name. And just drop me a note on LinkedIn. Let me know that you heard me on the show here, and I'd love to connect.
Lisa Ryan, thank you so much for coming on to the Nolimitspreneur Podcast today and for sharing so much incredible value. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to share so much value again with everybody, and I wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So thank you so much once again to my valued guest, Lisa Ryan, for coming onto the Nolimitspreneur Podcast. I really hope you got a ton of incredible value out of today's episode. If you haven't already joined the Success Nation, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or on any of your favorite podcasting apps, along with leaving a review so others can also get the benefit that you got out of today's episode. You can also go to nolimitsmindset.com right now to download the 7 self-limiting beliefs that are stealing your success away guide for free so you can continue to master your mindset. Once again, my name is Maher Abiad. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Stay tuned for the next amazing episode coming out next week, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
You've been listening to another quality episode of the Nolimitspreneur Podcast with your host, Maher Abiad. Want to continue to master your mindset? Download the 7 self-limiting beliefs that are stealing your success away guide for free right now at nolimitsmindset.com.